Hey, Clark Brown here. I can't be here this week for the podcast due to some prior engagements, so I'm leaving you in the most capable hands of Toby Clem, and he is interviewing a good, close, independent contractor that we know very well named Russ Harlow. I hope you enjoy it, and I definitely will see you very, very soon.
For the sake of anybody that might be listening, I just want to point out that Russ and I have known each other on Facebook for a long time. We've collaborated on some things. We've shared opinions and thoughts. I think we've probably kind of debated a little bit too, because it's healthy. And I just want to make sure that we frame this conversation properly, just due to the fact that I think there's nerves, there's emotions that are high right now in some of the online forums. And I just want it to be known that we're doing this just to have a conversation, and this is not to tear anyone down. This is about listening, really. It's for me to hear more of Russ's take on the industry, some of the voices in the industry that are the loudest, and to just have something beyond the written voice that Russ has developed over the last few years in the Rebels group. I guess, what is it now called? The Claims Alliance group or whatever, which is ironic, but I digress. And then some of the recent articles on LinkedIn. I think in all the writing that you've done, you've kind of laid out the pain and some solutions for some contractors that a lot of these guys are living in on the daily, but they don't speak about them. They're just, like I put it the other day, they're more in ninja mode. They just do their thing. They do it quietly. They do it well. And they just keep their head down. My hope is that by putting this conversation out there, I hope that the leadership of the RIA can hear it. If carriers hear it, great. And then peers. I would like for peers that maybe are the ones that are keeping their heads down, that they might stick their heads up and express what they experience so that we have more of a collective voice. But I think you and I both are aligned in that we're just going to keep doing what we do, knowing that we may not be able to change anything, but if we can help someone along the way, that's all we really want to do. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I encourage you to use the link in the description below to join Restoration Business Academy. There's a small group of restoration professionals who are leveling up their business, they're finishing jobs, and collecting payment. Their cash flow is phenomenal, their receivables have been slashed, and they're looking to run their restoration business different from how the industry tells you that you have to run it. All they look for is freedom. All they want is the ability to run a good business and get paid. We've come up with a way to do that. It's inside of Restoration Business Academy. It's our client onboarding course. Also, with a subscription, you get access to me, Toby, or Clark, or another coach based on your needs, and we can help you implement the system really quickly in your business. It's simple, but it's not easy, and we're here to help. Without further ado, let's dive into your story a little bit, just to give the listeners a little bit more context of who you are, what you do, and where this voice has come from.
Well, it's funny, Toby. I appreciate coming on. Like, I don't feel like a voice, right? And I think while we're probably going to touch on some things that are kind of current and happening right now, I think there's an evergreen quality of what we're going to talk about, because there's always somebody's going to come along 5 years from now and go, oh, I wish I had heard this 5 years ago. Like, there's still that quality to it, right? And so, I guess, where does it come from? I don't know. I was raised by a father who taught you can't fight City Hall, but you can piss on the steps. So, like, Dad, really? But again, it leads you to just be like, listen, that's wrong. I disagree with that. Here's why. You don't have to be disrespectful. Like, that's more of a disrespectful statement. Like, it's just that we can have a professional conversation, and I think that's the part of it that really that matters, because I think that's where change really happens. And we don't have to change the whole industry. If 5 people listen to this go, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. Oh, maybe I'm going to change how I do business. And I think we'll talk a little bit about how I came to that realization in my own business.
Yeah, I'd love to. So you own a restoration company, correct?
Yeah, I came into the industry with no experience. I bought a franchise in 2018, a smaller name. I was looking to get into business, realized that this was an industry that what I loved about it was that we were helping people in need. It was a little bit more, resistant to recession and those types of things. And so that's how we ended up in restoration. We started building our reputation. I left that franchise, oddly enough, because I was the voice that wouldn't shut up. And I was literally asked to leave. I was on the Franchise Advisory Council and went through a process where the franchise got bought by a bigger franchise, which got bought by a bigger franchise, and things went downhill. And I was just started saying some things that a lot of people were thinking. And just to your point you just made earlier, some of those guys are like, oh, I agree with everything you're saying. I'm like, then why don't you speak up? Like, well, I don't really like making waves.
Yeah.
And then they watch me get essentially kicked out, asked to leave. And I left the franchise, went on my own in 2022, and love saving all that money on royalties. Because I'm spending all the same amount of money on marketing that I was before, but it's all going to me.
Right.
And so that franchise focused a lot on mold, and so that's like still 60% of our revenue. We found a niche in that, something we do a little bit better than a lot of the bigger national franchises. So a lot of the restoration companies chase a lot of water and the insurance work, and I think that's kind of part of the problem. We're going to probably dive into some of that, and that's
I'm sure we'll touch on it. Yep.
How we've built our business.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your journey, how you got into it. What made you kind of start to, go back a little bit. When you started to feel the strain of the carrier-controlled practices, I'm really trying to be agnostic here, but I think we both agree that there's a lot of control by the carriers in the industry as a whole. Some feel that it's for the good, some not so much. So speak on that a little bit, and then what prompted you to start writing and publishing articles? Because if I'm not mistaken, writing and publishing articles kind of became a thing before the most recent debate, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have opinions, and it's a way for me to share them. I try to do it professionally so it can help others. Like, I'm not selling anything. I don't have a service or a program that I'm selling or training, or, it's just like, hey guys, this is possible. And it's funny. I tend to be not risk averse. So I would probably, if I've been in the industry for 20 years, I'd probably be just like everybody else who's looking at it going, yeah, I don't know if I want to change my whole business model. That sounds kind of risky. Like, that literally would be me. But because I came into the industry with no experience, things looked different to me. So think 2018, Rebels was still, I think it was in its second iteration at that point. There was still a lot of communication about, taking leverage away from carriers and standing on your own 2 feet. And a lot of the things made sense. But it was a process. It was years of going through the same experiences that many restoration companies and owners, project managers deal with on the daily, right? It's, getting pushback, dealing with third-party administrators who are just hired to cut bills, all these other things. I mean, one of the first things we did was abandon Xactimate. We went to and I got help from the franchise network. There was some franchise owners that were doing strictly time and materials. They shared with me what they were doing. And when I saw it on paper, I was like, oh, that makes sense. There's your labor, there's your equipment, here's your materials. It's a list of, 50 things. We do have a more comprehensive price list just in case we have that type of project. But, the things you always use, dehues, air movers, 6 mil tape, all those things, it's on there. We just write it up and it's pretty simple. At that time, my labor rates were too low. They pretty much represented, my labor burden, maybe a little bit higher than Xactimate. And so it still I wasn't charging what I needed to charge. because now my labor rates include overhead, profit, all of those things. I've shared it before. I used Michael C. Stone's Markup and Profit book and his calculator online to help me figure out what those prices should look like based on
Great
my
book.
P&L. And
Great
that's a
book.
$40 Excel calculator that you can buy. And I'm like, okay, all you need is good numbers. And if you have a good bookkeeper and know your numbers, which again, alas, many don't, but it's a good start. And so we started moving away from that, started doing those types of things. And I knew we were going to talk about it today. And so I was looking at where was a critical junction for me in my business, and it was December 2020. Been in business for 3 years at that point, and there was 2 jobs I ran into that really shifted things for me. One was a water heater that went early in December. We went out, got everything out, got it dry, took care of it. I don't know, it was maybe $6,000 or something. The client was a scumbag, and he saw $6,000 and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that's so much money. And when the carrier sent him the check in January, he kept it. He cashed it. He went right into his account. It had my business name on it. We had a direction of pay, everything. And when I reached out to the carrier, they're like, it's between you and the insured. I'm like, I sent you a direction to pay. They're like, all right, well, we'll give you a copy of the canceled check. And sure enough, my business name is listed there, but they weren't going to do anything about it. Your bank fraud just happened, insurance fraud just happened, and you're not going to do anything about it?
The irony is they told you to work it out with the insured. I want to come.
Who
We're gonna
already
come back
robbed
to this.
me? Robbed me?
We're going to come back to that one. That's
Well,
funny.
that story gets a little bit more interesting, Toby.
Oh, okay.
Because they finally did an investigation through their bank, realized, jumped through all their hoops, did their processes, and this was a local mutual company, which tend to be better, but recently not so much. But anyway, they backed that check out. He still had it. The money was still in his account months later, and they backed it out of his account. And they said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to send you the check this time instead of sending it to him, but it's still going to have his name on it. I'm like, how does that change anything? Now I have to go get this, signed affidavit, with notarized saying that he has no claim to these funds, and he already robbed me once. They're like, well, that's what we're going to do. And at this point, I've got a lien on his property. The only reason he wanted to get, and lucky for me, he wanted to sell his house later that year in 2021. And so because of the lien and everything else, he was, he went along with it.
You had the leverage.
Unfortunately. And in most cases, if he just waited a year to sell his house, lien's no good anymore. That changed my process on how I went about things. I started treating everything like it was going to go to court. 1 week, follow up with the client. Week 2, hey, find out please with your adjuster what's happening. Use my emails as an excuse to go find out where the money is. Week 2, it's a little reminder. Next week, we're going to send you kind of a strongly worded letter and threaten to lien your property. That's another opportunity for you to go to your adjuster and say, where's that money? And then you're going to have 10 days. And then I'm going to file a notice of intent to file a lien. And then, at 45 days, I'm filing a lien because in Connecticut, you got 90 days from the end of work. So that's how I started doing business after that guy. And I still ran into problems. Clients are like, why are you hassling me about this money? It's coming from, they weren't backing me up. Weeks later, after helping them, standing in 6 inches of water and crying to, listen, just call the insurance company. We don't want anything to do with this. So our process changed to being a process for working with billing the carrier. And then there was another one later that year that Christmas Day, there was a lot of flooding in 2020 in our area. We had a bunch of snow before Christmas, and then it got warm, and it rained 2 inches, and every basement around flooded. I'm on the phone with this guy on Christmas Day, trying to help him. He's about 40 minutes away. We came in as a referral, and then 5 o'clock in the morning, my son and I are up, getting to Home Depot and Lowe's because I was afraid we weren't going to be able to replace his sump pump. Because every basement was flooded. I'm like, we're going to get there as soon as they open. We're going to get over there. Of course, the sump pump is jerry-rigged from the owner he bought it from. I had to go back and forth to Home Depot 2 or 3 times to get the pieces I needed to just get it working again. And I didn't get a contract signed. And when he saw the $1,200 bill on a Saturday morning, he was like, "Oh, I'm not paying this. I should have called a real company, like enter national franchise name."
Yeah.
And I said, they would have charged you $1,500 to show up, because again, everybody was flooded, and all the forums on Facebook were filled with, "Who should I call? Oh, call this guy, this S company or that S company." And they're like, "Oh, they charged me $1,500 to come out on Christmas." And they're like, so I already know that that's really true. And again, nobody wants to go out on Christmas.
Right.
But again, that's the business, and if they're going to pay it, then they're going to do it. And they all know it's not covered because it was all groundwater.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Self-pay? Yep, we're not coming out for that anyway. And if we are, it's going to cost you."
Right.
And I had to take him to small claims, and then he got ordered to pay like $30 a week, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And then he sold the house, moved out of state, stopped paying me, and thank God it was a cheap lesson.
Yeah, for sure. In the grand scheme of things, for sure.
Yeah, and I got paid most of it, but either way, it was like, there's just got to be a better way. And so I started looking at or listening to people who are doing self-pay. And, the common problem that you run into is, how are my clients can't afford it. They don't have the money for that. I'm like, but every contractor in the world works like that. And they're like, "Yeah, but that's a planned thing. Oh, they've been saving up to put in that deck, or they want to do this addition," or yes. But there are plenty of situations that come up. The one I use all the time, and I think I used in the article, was, if their boiler goes, they're going to find the money to pay for it.
Right.
They need hot water. They need heat. Right? That's 15, 20 grand. They're going to come up somehow with that money. We are no different.
Yeah, somehow plumbers and HVAC contractors can get, $3,500 for a change out, whether it's, whatever device in the home it is, or appliance it is, but somehow we're different. And that's just always boggled my mind that argument actually holds water with lots of people in the industry.
Sure. So, and look at their labor rates.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
HVAC
That's
tech,
not even talking about labor rates.
$175 an hour, plumbers $300 plus an hour. And it's like, well, you can't charge, $150 for a technician. The hell I can't.
Right. It says who? It says who?
Oh, they're never going to pay it. They do.
Yeah, they do. Yep. So that's a great kind of segue into the debate. I'm just going to call it a debate that's been happening on social media. There's some rhetoric out there that we are in the claims industry. So take that, and then I would love to hear from your perspective as a boots on the ground, day-to-day operator, your reality as it relates to that. I think your reaction to the messaging from some of the industry leaders is widely known, but for those who haven't maybe seen the articles or the debate, let's just talk about that for a minute. Talk about the daily grind, the receivables issues. You touched on them before, but receivables issues, cash flow problems, things like that as a restorer. From your perspective in the past, I know you don't really have a lot of those issues now, but from other people that you've been talking to as a result of this debate and the articles that you've put out, maybe.
Sure, and they kind of go hand in hand. One was in response to, a podcast that some industry leaders had put out, and it was more like a video press release almost. And so I took some issue with some of the things that were said, and it covered a bunch of different issues. Some of the things were like, one of the ones that really sticks out in my head was, if you take anything other than a collaborative position with the carrier, you're putting the insured in a difficult position or in a position of a fight. And, day to day, that's not true. In my experience and in many of my peers and colleagues' experience, it's the carrier who's putting the insured in the middle of a fight by denying what is obviously a covered claim right out of the gate just to see if they can get away with it, delaying things to wear people down. We know the tactics. They do it all the time.
There was a book written about it.
There was a
ironically.
book written about it, and so it's like if they didn't do those things, we wouldn't have to take a stance like, listen, you're going to be facing some difficult things. These are some of the games they're going to play. Be careful of this. They might push a preferred vendor on you. That's another conversation to have later, probably. And so the idea that having anything other than a collaborative approach with a carrier is ridiculous to me, because listen, there are bad contractors. There are bad, bankers. There are bad, it just, listen, that's life. It's human nature. It's the way it is. Like, I get it. So we can't just go, oh, well, it's to protect the insured, because there's just no chance. There are just so many carriers and adjusters that are not trying to, like the old days, make the insured whole.
Right.
They're like, no, we're looking at our profit margin now, and we think you're the bad guy. Your prices are too high because it cuts into our profit margin too much. And, that's the problem. And I think so when you put us in and say you're part of the claims process just because our client may be reimbursed or paid, our work might be paid for ultimately by an insured's contract with their insurance company, doesn't mean we're in the claims industry. Now, preferred vendors, they have contracts with carriers at high levels. Some of these franchises, yeah, you know what? Some of those guys are in the claims industry. And so I think that distinction needs to be made. But as an independent and a staunch one, you might, you could be a Democrat and be like, oh, somebody calls you a Republican. And you're like, oh, no way. Just because I think one thing that Republicans think, like, or whatever.
Right,
Insert
yeah.
party name, same thing, sure. Right? So I think that's the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you're like, no, I'm not in the claims industry. And when those industry leaders double down and say things like, we wouldn't even exist without insurance and those types of things, I'm just like, no, I disagree, sir, and this is why.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting debate. And I chimed in on that particular one that you're referring to there. In fact, I think I kind of am the one that maybe have pseudo started it, because I simply put in a response two words, claims industry with 2 question marks. Like, really? But what I found interesting, and I think I may have offended some people, and I just want to, I'm going to take this moment to kind of set the record straight from my perspective on that debate. I used a comparison to an authoritarian or tyrannical regime. By no means was I saying that the people in the debate were tyrants or authoritarian. I was talking about the system that they're supporting and advocating for. I've met 2 of the leaders that we're referring to in person. I've had dinner with one of them. Great conversation, great people. Honestly, they're good people. I like them. The 2 that I'm referring to specifically, I like them. Good people. We have fundamental differences and disagreements. But by no means am I calling either one of them tyrants or authoritarians. What I'm saying is the tactics that are being used are like unto tyrannical or authoritarian regimes. And I'm going to specifically redefining common terms. That tactic has historically been used by regimes, governments, or groups to move society and groups of people in a direction of control. A simple example that is used every single day that is not really up for debate. Estimate and invoice. An estimate by definition is anticipating or trying to determine what we expect a cost to be in the future. An invoice is documentation of what was done and the costs associated or the charge associated. But somehow the system that I'm suggesting has authoritative or tyrannical likeness has somehow switched it and actually removed invoice almost completely from the process, and it's only an estimate. And you're submitting an estimate after work is complete. That is not according to the definition in all reference material. So that's one simple example. And I was suggesting in the debate online that to call us claims specialists or claims industry is slowly doing the same thing that they've done with estimate and invoice. They're shifting the narrative to make everyone believe that this is who we are, and when we accept that that's who we are, our behaviors change. So, again, for the record, I'm not saying that the people involved are tyrannical or authoritarian. I'm saying the system is. And I hope I've clearly explained in written form and now in verbal form what I mean by that. Any comments to that?
Yeah, so I can see how the language seems more inflammatory to people on the other side, Toby. And I think your explanation kind of really breaks it down for people to understand. I think when you look at it and you go, look, it's not a level playing field. The carriers hold the purse strings. They have the leverage. This is not an equal relationship. There's definitely a power imbalance. I mean, we're not involved in that contract. The insured is on equal footing. They have a contract with us. They have a contract with the insurance company. They're on equal footing because those contracts protect them as well as us, right? So I think that's what's important. And you're right. They do change words like that. And, it's... I even stopped using the word estimate. I say proposal. I say a contract with a rough order magnitude. I don't if I haven't even done any work yet, it's a contract. It's not even an estimate, right? So I'm recognizing the same thing that you're saying. I just take it out of my vocabulary. Perfect example. Here's a perfect example. When we moved to time and materials earlier, even when we were still billing the carrier for our client, we know that they always push back on supervisor hours, right? So instead of having technician, lead technician, and supervisor, what we did was it was just easier to change it to Tech 1, Tech 2, and Tech 3 with 3 different pricing levels. And we never got any pushback because they were looking for the word supervisor.
Interesting.
Right? So we just changed the word we used and billed the same, and it was what it was.
Yeah, for those listening that are interested in the methodology that Russ is talking about, when we have clients that we're trying to teach this onboarding process to, I suggest that they do the same thing, like removing the tool, right? You're just removing the tool from their arsenal so that they can't weaponize it against you. T&M billing versus Xactimate, if you remove Xactimate, you're going to get far less pushback because they don't have a quick and easy way to dissect what you're billing. So if you remove the tool from their tool bag and give them something else, it's a foreign language to them, and typically you receive less pushback. Now, if a carrier or adjuster is listening to this, I'm sure this is nothing new to them, but if they see it as a tactic being used, they're probably going to try to come up with a way to combat it. But you just got to stay one step ahead of the game.
Yeah, and I think it was a great change 5 years ago, and it's probably they'll probably adjust in some way. I know that they've made other adjustments. I'm already trying to think 5 years down the road, like the changes in the industry. I'm thinking about the next article because I see costs going up, insurance costs going up, premiums going up, deductibles changing, a lot more. Used to see percent deductibles on like wind and hail or certain disasters, and now it's straight across the board. I'm seeing 2 and 3% deductibles. The median house in the United States is 450. 3% deductibles like 12 grand.
Yeah.
You want to talk about nobody having the money? Guess what? They don't even have the deductible.
Right.
So I think that those changes are going to impact restorers a lot, because at the end of the day, if you haven't changed how you do business, now you're stuck with somebody who can't even pay your deductible. They don't want to be out of pocket for any dime. And maybe it's an $8,000 mitigation. They haven't even met the deductible yet.
Right. Yeah, Clark and I have been talking about this for a couple of years now, and the term retail restoration has kind of become a label that we've put on what you're talking about right here, and we certainly see this as the future. Like in the past, they've called it cash pay, cash versus insurance, right? A lot of mold is cash pay, right? Well, we should be looking at every single client that way in the future, because to your point, they're not going to meet the deductibles, and we're going to have to help them find the money or come up with the money to be able to afford taking care of their property, because most people don't have a savings account. Most people don't have the reserves. So helping them get the money is certainly going to be a way of the future, and helping them understand the value that we bring versus just letting a program vendor come in. So, kind of on the program vendor, this is going to be just a little bit of a side note. I find it so ironic that the reasons that the industry associations and some of the leadership in the industry say that they do what they do because of bad contractors, the irony is oftentimes, not all, and I'm not going to blanket statement, but most of the program vendors that we encounter are of the poorest quality restoration out there. Our independent clients often tell us that they go in behind program vendors to fix the poor quality workmanship and some of the other tactics, and they hear the horror stories of how they were treated by the program vendors. So I just find it ironic that a lot of the weight is given to bad contractors, but yet it's the ones on the very programs that they're instituting to try to fix that are of the worst. Ironic.
And you're right. And it's not all. There are bad independents. There are bad program vendors.
100%.
It's not a blanket statement. I think there's probably an equal percentage. Here's the challenge. I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine who used to work with a major franchise, was a preferred vendor. He's now doing asbestos abatement in his own company. And so he's still kind of dealing with insurance and some of those preferred vendors as a referral partner and a subcontractor. But he shared some stories with me that I wasn't aware of, dealing with the rating system that they deal with under some of these managed repair contracts and the SLAs. Like, you're going to be scored based on the time that you show up and the different things that happen and how long it takes you to dry, and all, not whether or not the client was taken care of, but were these financial metrics and time metrics met? And then some of the guys in the network found they're still a good franchise in our area, but you could see how the focus was different. Client get left out of the loop. They're just directly, communicating with the carrier because they've become the de facto client now, because, that's who sent them there. That's who's paying them. It's like, like I showed up to rake a park somewhere in town, and nobody's gonna. There's just the client is just out there in the wind. You know what I'm saying? And so all these metrics get put in place to measure their performance, and the higher they score on that, the more referrals they'll get from the carrier. And some guys found a way to timestamp in the system. They weren't even doing the work. They just found a way around it to timestamp in the system to make their score way higher than everyone else. And they were getting, more of those referrals because their score was higher. Like, these are the things that people don't understand when they get on some of these programs. And like when I was buying a franchise, one of them was like, yeah, we're on the preferred vendor list for State Farm and for Allstate. State Farm, we have an agreement that's, about 10% less than normal pricing, and Allstate, they sold their soul for like 15% or something. And I was like, how am I supposed to make any money when I'm giving away 15% and you're taking 9% royalties? Like, I swear to God, the franchise guy said, volume.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed. I laughed. It reminded me of an old SNL skit about the Change Bank of America. They're like, hey, you want to come in? If you have a 20 and you need 2 5s and a 10, we'll give it to you. If you need, I don't know, how many nickels is that? 4,000 nickels? We'll give you 4,000 nickels. And they're like, and the guy's like, how do we make any money? Volume.
Mm-hmm.
All you're doing is shuffling paper, man.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah. It's a tough model. And listen, it works for some.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the loudest voices in the industry have played the volume game and been very successful. But instituting those processes across the board and making small independents adhere to those same processes won't work. It's not going to work.
I think that's the challenge, right? And I stated this fact that, these guys have some program vendor relationships, and they're in a position to make decisions that affect all of us. They have a Herculean task of trying to do what's right for everyone and not just right for themselves. And that's not easy. Now, I'm not suggesting that just means they're going to make what's best decision for themselves. I mean, that is human nature, but they're going to have to battle that. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you group it all together, going back to your authoritarian thing, some restorers are just more equal than others, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's very interesting dynamic for sure. And to your point, I think we need to emphasize that we understand the dichotomy that they face. We're just asking them to be careful not to make it a blanket statement and shift narratives because they live in an echo chamber. It seems that they don't hear the voices of the independents, and they believe that they know better. That's the way it comes across. There's certainly room for them to say and do things that would help those of us who are in this smaller independent space get on board. But I think to your point in an article, they're just not saying or doing those things. So let's touch on, we're kind of dancing around this topic of what's the disconnect between elevating the industry and making it work for the majority or for a lot. Like, how can we do both in your mind? Or is it possible?
So it's funny. I had an interesting conversation with another individual the other day, and this came up kind of. And I think that, well, one, we don't have the power to change the industry. I can't affect what carriers are going to do. I can't affect what, major franchises are going to do. I can't affect what people in my own market who I'm friends with are going to do, right? I can only make changes according to my business and what I can influence. And so that's how I ended up where I am today. I can't change everything. I hear people talk about, well, let's unionize, or let's all get together, or let's all, let's go to Congress. Let's get our own NAICS code. I'm like, everybody's like, if we just had more regulations, we could get the bad guys out. No, you wouldn't. None of this changes anything except it makes it harder to do business. So there's a lot of talk about things that people think are important. I think a lot of it is hoping some big change will make the difference for them. Or somebody else will go petition Congress. I think we have one paid lobbyist, and I'm sure that guy or gal has a very difficult job considering the
Yes.
thousands that the carriers have. But where can you make the most difference? And I think it's in helping individuals who want to make a change in their business, make a change in their business. And ultimately, it will likely change as you go down the road. It'll have an impact on the industry overall, but you can't sit and wait for it. You'll be bankrupt, you'll be gone, or you'll, be a servant to some contract, some TPA contract that you signed up for and realize, oh dear, this is terrible.
Yeah, I think this is an area that I think we disagree on some levels, because I believe that for the area that I think we disagree, in short, is becoming a registered trade, right? I think that we could now. Will that change the carrier involvement? No, but I think it could make restorers' lives a little bit better. So in my mind, I think I can go kind of halfway with you in that I think a registered trade would help the industry as a whole. But I also agree in saying that I disagree with you in that one statement. I also agree with you that if we just focus on the world that we operate in and we get 10,000 people to just improve the world that they live in by being independent minded and doing what's best for their customer first, that will change the industry. But it's not that we're getting together, we're not rallying together. We're just all focused on our individual little world, and our individual little world will have impact on the greater world. So I agree with you in one sense, but I disagree slightly in another sense.
We don't have to agree on everything, Toby. It's okay.
Beautifully said.
I'm all right, man.
It could be simpler. I know.
Are you kidding? End this podcast right now. And here's my counter argument. Right? And it may not be associated to being a registered trade, but I think that restorers, as a whole, have too high an opinion of themselves. This is the conversation I had with somebody else. I'm just being honest. At the end of the day, we're cleaners. We are really detail-oriented and high-priced cleaners. At the end of the day, now that may be an overgeneralization. I mean, listen, if we do some things wrong, can somebody get sick? Let's screw up a house? Sure. But that's true for anyone in the trades. The electrician doesn't do it right. He double taps, something in the panel. Guess what? A house could be on fire, right? If the plumber does it just, yeah. It's true for all of us. So thinking that we're special, we're not. And I know that's going to get some negative feedback. I deal with mold. Listen, there are a lot of people who are dealing with, health issues and everything else, water damaged buildings. I get it.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's no different than anything else. And to think that we're special or more important is just, I don't know, hubris? I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I get that sense from folks. I think, to your point, plumbers and electricians, they're both registered trades. And I think that's what a lot of folks would like to see, is that we just become equal to them, because in a lot of senses, we're less than because of that.
In whose mind?
That That's a fair question. In hours, right?
In my client's mind, I'm just as important. The
Sure.
plumber's like, yeah, that's mold. I don't touch that. Call Russ.
Yeah. That's a fair point. You have a fair point.
And again, it's okay to disagree.
100%. And
Let's
I
not
think
get derailed.
that's I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted to get on this podcast, is to hear, obviously, you have no problem being the one that being disagreeable. But I think it's important that we have a conversation and understand the opinion beyond the written word. So anyway, back on track. If you like the systems and processes that we're talking about in this video, then you're going to want to get to Richmond, Virginia on November 5th and 6th. We've got a 2-day class where we're going to break down and unpack our entire client onboarding course and system. If you're tired of the headache of fighting for every cent that you're owed, if you're tired of negotiating on work that's already complete, if you're tired of your bills being slashed and the customer being in the dark constantly, we're going to teach a small group of restorers how they can get paid for the work that they're owed in full and on time every single time. It's a proven system. We have the data, we have the social proof, we have the testimonials. You're going to want to join us November 5th and 6th. Link in the description below. See you there. All right, so can you talk just a little bit about what finally made you to decide to abandon the old playbook? I know you talked briefly about what December 2020, you didn't get a contract signed. So there was a little bit that you talked about as a pivotal moment in your business. Would you say that was the moment that you decided to abandon the old playbook?
No, we started making changes. Like, it was definitely more gradual. And then we were still doing that to some extent, moving forward. But again, water was still usually about 25% of our revenue. We're not doing a ton of it. We're not chasing it. Like, for us, it's tough because now we've got to be a real big boy business. We've got to pay for marketing. We've got to be out there in the community. We've got to be doing all the things real businesses do in order to gain business. And let's face it, those clicks and those things in the industry, they're dominated by the big players and they're more expensive. So it's easier for me to spend money on the other type of advertising where they're not chasing as much. And for us, that was mold and some of the other things we do, right? So that we've started doing more and more water because our reputation has built. And so we start getting more of those referrals. But, again, I think the time I decided was, I ran into a client, small little water loss, took care of it for them. Her mom was, I don't know if she was an attorney or had some job at some insurance company or something. But when I went through my process of, hey, can you get the money? Hey, can you follow up? Oh, you're going to have a nasty letter next week. She got really indignant. My mom says, you're not to contact me anymore. And she's going to have an attorney. This is between you and the insurance company. And, the insurance company's like, oh, it's going to be 14 days before, we even, turn this around. I said, all right, well, can you send it to the insured? And they'll pay me directly. And we worked that out. And I decided that was the moment I go, I'm not doing this anymore. This is effing stupid. I am not playing this game anymore. And we went to straight self-pay. And everybody's like, and I hear it all the time, my clients can't afford our work.
Yep.
I mean, we touched on it before. Oh, I'm going to lose clients. Great. We do. And it's great. We charge to go out. I charge a fee to go out, do the inspection, moisture mapping, write up our contract, give them a photo report. They've got a deliverable. Then they decide whether or not they want to move forward. We talk about it on the phone. Listen, I don't bill your insurance company directly. I don't do any repairs. We just do mitigation only. I just want you to know this up front before we kind of go and do that. Great, come on out. And then we credit it back towards work they hire us to do. And our ideal clients want to work with us because of that, right? That's the issue. And so we go out and we do that. We don't run into those situations. We do offer third-party financing, right? They never use it.
Yeah. I hear that all the time.
One time I've had somebody use third party financing. I had another guy who went to his bank to get a little bit of a loan to get something, taken care of first. They want to use us because of our reputation. They have no problem. Here's my credit card. Okay, you got to start baking that in the price because, $10,000 mitigations at 3% on your merchant processing.
Yeah.
You got to bake it into everything. But hey, it's the cost of doing business.
Yep.
Let's add it in there, right? Because in Connecticut, I can't add on a fee. It's illegal for me to change the fee based on how they pay. I've been working on changing that with my local legislator. But so, and again, we say, look, it's 50% to get started. I'll send you the QuickBooks invoice. This is how much we think it's going to be $8,000. All right, and I do this all the time. We add like an extra day of drying, an extra 2 to 4 hours of labor. And then I come back and go, it was only $7,200.
You're a hero every
They're
single
like,
time.
oh my God, that's awesome.
Yes.
And God forbid we run into something, we stop. We document. I say, hey, look, this is what we found. Come take a look at this. I've got to write a change order. It's going to be an extra day. It's going to be an extra 4 hours, whatever it is. Write a change order, get it signed, drive forward. Not a problem.
Yep.
Right? Yes, it's a little bit of a process to learn how to do it and do it right. But it's so simple.
Sure. Yeah. It's not easy sometimes, but it's simple. It's
Right.
not
So
rocket
those are the
science.
things that kind of tipped it for us.
Yeah.
And one of the things, so I'm learning now that there are some in the industry who are not just going self-pay, but they are getting a contract signed, collecting a deposit, enough to cover stabilization, testing, whatever else needs to be done, and saying, here's our contract. This is what the burn rate is. It's going to be, $575 a day. We have $2,500. That's going to cover us for 4 days. You need to go to your insurance company. This is a $20,000 mitigation. You've got to go and say, we need 12 grand so this guy can get started. I can pay him his 50%. We have a little bit extra left over. And then as that process gets moving, all right, you get time to go back to the insurance company. We've got a little bit better idea on how long this is going to take. And so this works for much larger projects. When I talk to this individual, I'm just going to say his name, Bob Timmel. He and his son Dylan, and his daughter too. I don't know her, but
Kaylee.
there you go. So he shared that process with me, and he's like, Russ, I got a $52,000 check today. We signed this contract 3 days ago. It's a $104,000 fire loss, and now we're getting started. And everybody in the industry is like, wait, what? You could do that? What?
Clark has been teaching this process for years, and Bob is one of the early adopters, and it works great.
And I'll tell you
Works
something
great.
else. I meet locally with 5 other business owners, restoration companies. One of them's my asbestos buddy. One owns a large national franchise, second generation, also a preferred vendor. Another one is a project manager for another large national franchise, also a preferred vendor. But we all believe in doing great work. The others are independents, including myself, and we all have different goals for our business. We all have, different approaches, and so we find it really educational to get together once a month to support each other in business. And this is just in Eastern Connecticut, man. This is just a tiny little swimming pool. The pond is not big.
Yeah.
Right? But we refer business to each other. I don't have a ton of fire experience. When I had a recent time to walk a fire, I called my friend. He met me on site. He was like, yeah, this is what I would do, ... And he's like, I don't even want a referral. Somebody taught me. And so I'm just going to, because it's you, that's what I'm going to do for you. And it's built relationships within the community. It builds relationships within our industry, right? I recommend doing something like that wherever
100%.
restorers are. And it really helps. Bob's meeting with us virtually next month because the guys were like, yeah, I want to hear how that's done. I don't want to be chasing ARs for 90 days. How's he getting that done? What about this? What about that? So he's going to spend an hour with us on a phone call during our regular monthly meeting. And he's looking forward to it, but not as much as me.
Yep.
So there's ways to do it.
Yeah. 100%. Hey, talk to me about, I think you and I share a belief that some of the tools that are touted as industry tools are tools of control. Are they useful tools? Yes, they are. I will never take away from that. But I feel that they've been flipped into weapons, tools of control against the contractors. So can you just talk a little bit about why you see them that way, and maybe how your documentation process looks like, just at a high level?
Sure. So early on with Xactimate, I was like, the licensing, the training, and everything else, like, it's expensive. And who has time to put 6 hours into an estimate? Well, at that point it is, right? Because you're trying to put everything together to figure out the scope. For me, it just never made sense. Like, I moved to time and materials really early on. I'm like, that just seems dumb. And here's the thing: when I meet with clients on other projects and they have some Xactimate printout, 8 pages, they can't understand a damn thing. They see a CAD drawing in the corner. They're like, I don't know what the hell this is. They see time and materials. Here's the scope of work. Here's what we're going to do. This is how many hours. This is like, they could see it in plain black and white, and they go, it makes sense to them. I utilize Company Cam heavily. Every project I go out to do an inspection for, there's a deliverable. So, we do charge to go out to do those inspections. I started doing that to get rid of the tire kickers in my, area. They said, because if they can't afford the amount we're charging, and we're going to credit it back to work they hire us anyway, they're probably going to go with the cheapest, and generally we're not. Although sometimes we are, because they call some of these guys who write stuff up in Xactimate and it comes out at $20,000 or $30,000 when it probably could only be done for $4,500, right? Because they're used to billing the carrier and getting pushback, and then it ends up being 12 anyway, or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? So for us, it was an easy transfer to move towards that and to get away from those things. I listened to I'll give you a perfect example. We had a client, June of 2024, had an issue. It was water damage. There was some mold. They had a mold assessor come out. They wrote it up. The carrier denied it. They're one of our local carriers. That's really terrible. I talked to them. They didn't. They were getting pushback on asbestos testing and everything else. And then the previous, it was actually one of my colleagues that I meet with monthly. He was on the job. He walked away getting a bad feeling from it. They called me a few weeks later. I had no idea he had been out there. I started working with them, and we worked through the process. They ended up with a PA. They ended up doing asbestos testing. Some things came back hot, and so that became part of our quote, because we were going to sub that, and it took 12 months to get that done.
Golly.
So we did that work in June 2025. And again, adding a PA to the mix, now it comes down to settlement. It's not about getting the work done anymore. It's like, we have to get to the end line so you can get your money. I get it. It is what it is, but they weren't going to get that money otherwise. Now, in January, the PA was out there meeting someone on site. This was a multifamily house. It was a 4-family house. The apartment next door left a window open, froze the heat pipe. Now we've got 5 affected rooms, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs, full gut downstairs. One of them's a kitchen. I mean, I wrote it up. I met the adjuster and the public adjuster on site 2 days later, because we're already working this other project. It was, I don't know, I think it was like $32,000 time and materials. Rough order of magnitude, right? Well, they brought out 3 different companies for comparatives. One of them was an Xactimate. I looked at it and I started reading it, and I go, I don't know this program really good. I called my buddy. I go, hey, walk me through this. And he goes, oh, they're adding notes in the F9, like, oh, demo room less than 200 square feet, but that doesn't include HEPA vacuum. It's only for sheetrock, and this was all plaster. So they were pulling all of these costs out, and then in the footnote it says HEPA vacuum, building materials left behind, like studs and walls. I'm like, putting it in an F9 note, it doesn't cover the cost. In 30 minutes, he and I turned around with their $18,000 Xactimate estimate and showed them $12,000 that they left off.
Missing
So
information.
you want to talk about using it as a tool against us? That is. And they said, well, this guy says you can do it for 18, so we're not going to pay more than that. You know the story.
Oh, yeah.
So that's still with the PA. I haven't heard back from the client. They don't have much fight left in them after an entire year of dealing with the other apartment. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but that's how it's used against us.
Yeah. I hear that story all the time, sadly. And I think that's the stuff that I wish the industry associations, the voices, the leaders of the industry would hear. And they acknowledge it, but I don't know that they hear it. It's interesting. So anyway, how do you handle conversations? Go and let's kind of remove that large job. Let's just talk about the day to day. How do you handle the conversations when a client pushes back on deposits, or that fear that we touched on earlier about my clients can't afford it, things like that?
Well, it's also why I try to have the conversation on the phone sometimes, because I want to know, am I wasting my time? Because I don't really need the $250 to go out there. It's going to take me 2 hours if I do it right, and I'm already losing money, right? Unless I can win the job. So a lot of times, either then they have that understanding, or I get out there and I talk to them. I said, look, we don't bill your insurance company. A lot of companies will tell you they will do that. We don't do that, and here's why. They're going to fight me tooth and nail. They're going to drag this payment out for 30, 60, 90 days. I can't afford, as a small business owner and a family-run business, to finance home repairs. Now, I offer third-party financing if it's going to help you get over that gap. But if you were having any other work done, you would pay a deposit, the work will get started, you pay the remainder based on the actual time and materials, as calculated at the end. And then if you're filing a claim, you go to your carrier and you submit it for reimbursement. There's a bunch of things that work in our favor in that sense. One, they've incurred the cost. There's not a lot of argument left to have. Right. And it's not like I charged them $1 million and they paid me $1 million for a $10,000 job. That's not what we're dealing with. We're talking about picayune things about, labor rates and things like that, which they can't dictate to me. They understand that if those other companies are billing the client or the carrier, it changes the relationship. Right. Suddenly the insurance company becomes because they're holding the purse strings, they become the client. And if they're a preferred vendor, they're getting referred a bunch of work. Are they going to bite the hand that feeds it? So you just have to onboard the client in that sense so they understand, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, why wouldn't, what? Yeah, I'm not asking you to finance the repairs on my house. And I'm not going to give an interest-free loan to $1 billion insurance company, because that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. You are becoming the financing arm of the insurance company, and guess what? It's not going to be worth the money you put into it, or that you end up getting paid, because you're going to spend so much time on the back end chasing money, jumping through hoops, going through audits, and arguing with some third party, like Wardlaw or Sedgwick or however many million of them there are. I get it all the time. I'll see it all the time where I'll give my contract to the client, and some of them are just like, I just got to make sure this is approved first before I go, and I want to make sure it's covered. Like, that's fine. I know that guy's not coming back, right?
Yep.
And that's fine.
Move on.
Great.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. But a lot of times I'll see that happen. The third, let's just say it was, $5,000. And all of a sudden it comes back and Wardlaw will be like, hey, we come up with $1,500, because all they did was take my time and materials numbers, shift it over into Xactimate, and use that pricing. All they did was reduce the pricing. I said, you can't do that. You're using a unit price model, and I'm not. So you have to include all of your linear foot of this and square foot of that, which you're not doing. So they don't even know what they're doing. They think that that's okay.
Yeah.
I literally don't think that. I think that's truly out of ignorance for most of them. I don't think They're like, oh, this is easy. We'll just move it over, change the price. But that's not what they're doing. And so those are the conversations we have. And our ideal clients, because of our reviews and our reputation, they're just like, no, you're the guy we want to use.
That's awesome. What go back to when you had that shift in your overall business practices. How did that impact your receivables?
Oh, I mean, literally, our average AR is well under 3 days.
How many?
It's just under 3 days.
I thought you said 30.
No, 3. Well under 3.
That's
3.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
And it works. Like, even for my friend in the asbestos, and most of that stuff's coming under different things that are covered, right? On a covered loss. He doesn't do as many self-pay. Even he is doing this now. He's like, okay, it's a $25,000 job. This is what we're going to do. Let's approval moving forward. Because a lot of it's not as time critical as some of the things that we do. I mean, some of it is because it's a water loss or whatever. But he comes back and says, all right, let me know when the check's in the mail. And then we'll put it on the calendar to schedule work. He does the work on Friday. He gets the check on Tuesday. Because they've already... He's moved the back end negotiation onto the front end. So now he's not chasing them for 90 days looking for money or anything else. So there's even ways to do it that way and not get stuck for fronting all the labor and materials to get this work done.
Yeah.
Like, there's not just one way.
Yeah. So I have a client that came to us early last year. So 2024. They're one of the S franchises, and they are on programs because they have to be part of the franchise. They're smart about it. I would say they do what they need to do, but they also have allowed room in their business for plenty of organic work. So they figured out the game, shall we say. And they've made it work for them, but they had receivables over $1 million when they came to us, and that's why they came to us. And they said, "We need help. We need help." And we looked at it and we're like, "We think we can help you. We'll give you the program. We'll help you institute our onboarding program, but they're bound by contract to some of the program stuff." So that was a little bit of a question mark, but we did it. And in 90 days, we reduced their ARs. And again, they were over $1 million, reduced their ARs nearly 40%. 40% just by instituting accountability into their processes. So some of it they were able to use even in the program environment, but a lot of it came down to just holding the parties accountable and having a good follow-up system. So, again, I asked you about your shift in receivables. That's your account. I've got another account. There's lots of accounts out there, and I want this to go on record because there's so many, again, like I said early on in the podcast, there's so many ninjas out there that just keep their head down and just do the work. They figure it out. They'll make adjustments. They have big wins, but they just keep it to themselves. So it's good to hear social proof from you. I have other examples that I can share, obviously anonymously, but
Toby, it's funny because I had a friend of mine from the old franchise network who contacted me this past spring. He's like, "Oh, I see all your posts on Rebels and all these other things." He's like, I got six. This was like in March or April. He's like, "I have $600,000 in outstanding ARs from 2024. I got to figure this out. This is stupid." So at some point, you hit a point where you're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore." Mm-hmm. I sent him everything I could. Now, I wouldn't do that for just anybody. He's a friend of mine. You know, I'm like, this is how we do it. This is what we do. I have a bunch of materials that I sent to clients too about filing a claim, games they might run into, things they should understand about field adjuster, independent adjuster, public adjuster, all of these things to help them understand ACR, or ACV, RCV, all of these things that they might be running into. And I always point them to their local agent. That's not always a great thing, but it's always, because I'm not advising them on their claim. I'm saying, listen, these are things you need to be on the lookout for. These are things we've experienced. Have your agent walk you through coverage. What's your deductible? Are there any caps? Are there any limits? And one of the things I put, and all of my stuff's heavily branded. The other one that I put through is the power questions. I know that's made the circles. In a lot of us are familiar what those are in restoration. So that the clients can ask good hard questions about are you qualified? Are you can you settle my claim? Are you authorized to do this? Are there any things that I'm not in my policy that you haven't told me about? Are there any caps? All these questions that they need to ask that help them get to where they need to be, because we're just empowering them to take control of their claim. And anybody who's not going to do that is not a great client for us, and we're going to be moving on anyway. But they've got that material. They can look at it in 6 months and go, I've had people do this. I have had people call me after saying, oh, we don't want to be out of pocket at all, and call me 3 weeks later going, I can't get the company that the insurance company sent out here to call me back. And I have them on camera sleeping on my back deck half the day. They were worried that things weren't dry, and they kind of were getting a musty smell. And I just went through everything. Everything was dry. I said, that's the good news. But I'm going to come out for free, and you're going to record a video with me talking about the dangers of using a preferred vendor. And she's like, done.
That's
awesome.
Still
to be recorded, but that's going to be hitting our social media soon, I hope.
That's outstanding. Talk to me about why your perspective and the conversations you've had of late after the articles that you published and some of the conversations you've had. Why do you think so many contractors are waiting for the industry to change instead of changing their own business? Why are they waiting around?
It's human nature, man. I mean, it is what it is. From the beginning of time, people are in business. They don't have great business knowledge. A lot of people have gotten into a lot of trade businesses because they were working for somebody else. They learned, they said, oh, this is easy. I'm going to start doing it for myself. And just because they were good at what they were doing didn't mean they were going to be good at running a business. And so there's a lot of those folks in business and any trade, no more so or less so in restoration. I think you have the added pressure of being gaslit and manipulated, being told this is how things are done. This is, you do the work, you build the insurance company, you use Xactimate, you whatever, this is how it's done. And so that is part of the problem as well. And so they're like, oh, well, this is just how it's done. I guess I suck at it, or how do I deal? It's always asking the wrong questions. How do I deal with an adjuster who says this? And I read those comments now after doing this for several years going, I don't have those conversations.
Well, yeah. You could do that or just don't answer.
Well, it's funny. I mean, similarly, I had a claim 4th of July weekend. We got out there Saturday. Again, customer service, right? Holiday weekend on a Saturday because 4th of July was a Friday. This is what the plumber found: a leaking PEX pipe between a shared wall between two bathrooms that had been stapled through when the house was built. It finally deteriorated, started spitting. They found water damage in the basement, realized the plumber cut out the back of the cabinet, there was mold. They called their insurance company and said, oh, there's mold. They said, oh, you're not covered. I said, whoa. This is water damage all day long. I said, talk to your local, agent about it, whatever, but this is what you need to be. Don't say the M word anymore, because they're just going to use it against you, right? Because this isn't a mold claim. This is still wet. This wasn't from 6 years ago. This is wet now, and mold grew because it was out of sight. This is sudden and accidental, whether they like it or not. They paid us directly. We started on Monday. We finished up, I think, on Thursday. They, final payment. We came in under budget. Had to rip up a bunch of tile. God, it was was terrible. But anyway, we got paid,
You're reliving it.
got it clean and dry, all set, no big deal. Yeah, when you're chucking a truck, you get to live it all, man.
Yes, been there, done that.
But I got a call, and I said, here's a PDF copy. There was an elderly couple, and their daughter was helping them. I said, here's a PDF copy of the signed contract. Here's the itemized, final invoice. Here's the QuickBooks invoice to show that you paid. Here's our, PDF of our photo report from start to finish, from inspection when we first showed up to when we were done. Now, I've had 2 calls from that insurance company going, can you send us the documentation? I'm like, client has it all. And then the second call came, and it was like, yeah, they sent us the photo report, but it was in black and white. Like, the elderly couple probably printed it and then copied it and sent it. Right? And I was just like, all right, I'll renew the company cam link. I will send them a new PDF. I will copy their daughter on it, and I'll just recommend that they forward this to you. It's like, I'm not being a dick. I'm like, listen, and she goes, well, does that report have all the measurements for everything in it? I go, we don't take measurements. We removed what was wet, we cleaned, and we dried. She's like, okay.
That goes into something I've put in newsletters, blogs. I've given it to clients. We need to stop fighting the wrong battles. We are restorers. Our job is wet to dry. To your point earlier about being cleaners, dirty to clean. If we focus on those, the rest is cake. It's a cakewalk.
And that's it. She just didn't know what to do. Because she wanted to write up, this is way too high based on the numbers or whatever else. And I go, we don't take any measurements. This was 6 weeks ago. I got that call 7 weeks ago. I got that call yesterday. So it's like, I don't know what you want me to do. You should have probably sent an adjuster out. I don't know.
Yeah. So what does it look like to kind of go, what does it look like? We've touched on a lot of these, but what does it look like in practice to walk away from the wrong client? Because you've gotten really good at picking and working with the right ones. That means mathematically you should be walking away from quite a few.
We do, and sometimes we don't know until after the fact. For me, as a business owner and trying to provide a great service, sometimes you feel a sense of rejection when somebody's like, I went with somebody else. Like, that's natural. It's human nature. When we implemented the inspection fee, which comes with a deliverable and an estimate for work, or a proposal for work, and everything else, and a credit towards future work, it changed something in me. One, my reports got better. A lot of times I'd be out, it was some home inspector found mold in my attic. And I'd be out there, I realized it wasn't going to be a job, and I would be trying to get out of there as fast as possible. Human nature, right? Now, they're paying for my time. Hey, would you take a look at the basement for me while you're here? No problem. I'll make sure I'll take some pictures, I'll put it in the photo report. Guess what? My reports got better. Because now I'm charging it. It's a deliverable. Now this is a reflection on my business. This is not just me doing something nice. I'm giving them a deliverable. They're paying for it. My reports got better, right? And so all of these things happen when I go out there and I start having a conversation, with somebody who's either going to not use us or they're going to go with the insurance company's person or whatever happens. I don't know. Some people just ghost you. You never hear from them again. Follow up 3, 4, 5 times. That's okay. For me, I at least in my mind, I go, I was paid for my time. Nothing personal. That wasn't a great fit. Whether I know it or not, I know now it's not a good fit. And I've had enough bad clients that I go, okay, I just dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
Sleep like a baby. It is not a sin to say no to a revenue opportunity. I had a client just after going independent. Phone wasn't ringing as much, and I had to drive quite a ways to see this guy. Small little old leak on a raised ranch. There was some old mold he needed cleaned up and taken care of. I don't know, man. It was like, I gave him he signed the contract on a Friday. We were scheduled to do the work on Monday. It was like, at best, a half a day. I don't know. It was a tiny job. Maybe $1,200-$1,300. I don't even remember. And he emails me on Saturday, hey, I started ripping the stuff out. How much are you going to take off on the bill? And I was like,
the bill just went up, bro.
I go, I'm not coming. I go, I have no idea what you did, cross-contaminated. I can't take liability for what you might have done wrong. And so this is no longer a good fit. And so I wish you luck moving forward. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. So in the early days of that methodology in your business, how did you overcome the battle of lost revenue? Because that's one of the biggest objections that I hear when we talk about client onboarding is like, yeah, that sounds great, but I need the revenue.
Is your revenue worth your soul?
That's certainly one way to put it.
I mean, if you're going to sell your soul just to, listen, I've skipped paychecks before. I mean, it happens. I'm not a huge operation. I get it. But at the same time, you have to, again, you need to know your numbers, right? If you're looking at $1 million at 6% net profit or $750,000 at 10% net profit, which is more? I don't know. Set up a spreadsheet, punch it in. It's not that hard. If you can make less money but actually make more money, why wouldn't you do that? Because all of your overhead things like insurance and workers' comp, all these things are based on your revenue numbers, right? So if you're actually lowering your top line revenue but making more money or being more profitable, and not just as a percentage, like for simple numbers, the difference between $1 million and 5% and 500,000 at 10%, it's the exact same amount of money. Okay, so why are you working just to work? That you have to get over that. You have to figure that out as a business owner.
Yeah, you have to figure out what your purpose is. Like what is the meaning of all this? Why am I doing this? Is it to have a $50 million company, or is it to live a good life? There's nothing wrong with either one of those.
And those aren't mutually exclusive. You can have a $50 million company and have a good life.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess my audience typically is the smaller restoration company, and they don't want to go to $50 million. They want to be small and live a good life, but they're always chasing the revenue, and they're scared to hold people accountable, the policyholder accountable, because they feel like they have to sign the job, because busy to them equates to getting paid, and that's not necessarily the truth always.
It's just not the truth. I mean, that's the problem. If you're working just to keep the crew busy, it's a losing proposition. It just is. So you have to streamline your operation. You have to get A players because A players can do 2 to 3 times what B and C players can do. You have to get great people in your organization. They don't have to be restoration experience. They need to be great people. They need to have great character. You can train skill. You can teach anybody to do the things we do. It's not that hard. Mm-hmm. This is what I mean by guys and gals in the industry having an overinflated idea of restorers. It's not that hard. They have to take great care of your clients, because at the end of the day, that's who is the face of your company when they're out there. But if you can put together some great teams of 8 players, instead of having 5 teams out there doing 10 million and you've got 2 teams out there doing 7, I can already tell you're more profitable. Just that comparison alone.
Yeah. Yep. So if a contractor listening today wants to start regaining independence, what are the first 3 to 5 steps that you would recommend based on your experience?
First steps. Well, one, if you don't know your numbers, know your numbers. Like, dive into them. I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I've got all kinds of weird spreadsheets set up that only I can understand. They're not for public consumption, right? But it helps me figure out in my head. It helps me I don't overanalyze. But because I came out of a franchise and I don't have a CRM, I still need to know my numbers. What's my closing rate? How many qualified leads are coming in every month? How many of those are we going out and doing inspections? How many are we submitting proposals? I track those numbers, and I have to do it manually because I don't have a CRM. Okay, so it's a balance between time and money. You have to figure out for yourself how you're going to start understanding these numbers so that you can then start growing your business and doing the things that you need to do. God, you need to know if you're profitable. Some guys don't even know if they're profitable, right? I mean, a friend of mine's doing 5 times the amount of business I'm doing, but his net profit is half of what mine was last year. Now, because he's doing so much more revenue, that number is still bigger than mine, but they're both in single digits, so still not great. We've still got some things to figure out on our own to increase that net profit, right? Like, I'm not there. I'm still figuring this out. But man, I sleep like a baby and my stress levels are a lot lower and I'm not chasing all my tail like a lot of other restorers are doing. And so that's kind of what's important to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Find ways to do that. Talk to people who are doing it. Learn from them. Time and materials is not hard, but there are some significant changes you got to go through to figure out. Because if you don't know your numbers, you can't figure out your labor rate. And your labor rate's really where you're capturing, the bulk of your overhead and profit. So, if you have that number wrong, you can't. There are some inexpensive tools and there are some professionals that can help you do that. And getting to that place is an important step.
Yeah. Knowing your numbers is probably one of the most underutilized skills in this industry by far. I think it's a trades thing in general.
I think it is a trades thing.
But we see it a lot. So knowing your numbers, pricing accordingly, I agree, those are incredible. Incredible.
And if you're going to be doing as a lot of work that are going to, where people are going to be filing claims, good onboarding and understanding how to communicate with your client, help them communicate. And I don't mean help them communicate with their carrier, but preparing them for what's coming and how to look out for how the carrier is going to communicate. Like some of the simple things we tell them all the time. Don't accept anything they've said on the phone. Get everything in writing. If they refuse to send you an email, sit down, write an email and say, from our conversation on, Tuesday, August, blah, 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 this is what we talked about. This is my understanding of that. Write it down, send it to them. Now it's documented, right? Document all of those things, not just the loss, but your communication, because guess what? That's not the last adjuster you're going to deal with on this claim.
Yeah.
It's the first of many.
Of many, yeah.
Because that's part of the process and how they deal with, they're going to wear you down.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that onboarding step's an important one.
Good. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on and having this open dialogue. I will, for those listening that have not seen the articles, I'm going to list those in the description below. Is there any parting shots, final words that you'd like to put out there to the universe or metaverse, maybe?
Not really, man. I mean, it's simple, but it can be challenging. Like you can make these changes, but change is hard. And I think that resistance to change is some of the things that people face. Maybe you're just not there yet. Maybe you haven't hit a point in your business where you're like, I don't know, it sounds good, but it sounds like a lot of work. Okay, you're not there yet.
Yeah, the pain's not bad enough yet.
You'll get there. We all do. Or you just won't, and you'll go bankrupt. And a lot of businesses do that. And not knowing your numbers is probably one of the things that contributes to that most.
Yep, I agree. Well, again, thank you. We'll wrap it up. I've got links in the description below. I actually came across if for those that are interested, I actually have a 10% off of Company Cam. So I will link that below too. That's an old Alliance of Independent Restorers link that's still active. So I'll drop that in the comments below. We also have a 99 responses to adjusters that is a free ebook that we provide. Humor involved in that, but for anybody that's still listening, I'm going to link that below because it's fun to look through those and see where you can utilize some of them. So again, thanks, Russ, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Toby. I appreciate you, man.
See ya.